Be continuing to the second day of the tutorial. So in the last video we covered data structures, characters, all the data structures, right? And the printing statement, which is really crucial for you to print any of these codes onto the console, onto the terminal. And we also have variables, which you assign a variable to a value, or assign a value to a variable, and then print it out. And we also learned about operations and importing the math module, which would let you be like in touch with more functions, and also a little bit of concatenation, right? So today we're going to be talking about the loops, which I think is pretty important. Well, actually, before that, we're going to be talking about lists. Okay, this is pretty fun. So list is like a bracket 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a numerical list. So basically you add numbers to a list. So let's see how that works. So how do you initialize it? Is basically just let it be w be equal to 1, 2, 3, right? That's how you just initialize a list. It's as simple as this. And then print the w. Yeah, so that's how you print a list. And it's kind of different from Java, since in Java you cannot just directly print it in this form, and we don't have a list in Java. So it's pretty different. And for this you just have to initialize it like this. And how we're going to add or subtract or taking out any of the elements is we're just going to, so how to add is do append. So w.append the list name dot append the element that you want to add, and then we print a w. Yeah, let me just comment out these, like all of these, so that I don't really have to compile these. Okay, so as you can see, we just added this one. However, let's see, what if I add a g? Then it's also going to work, right? Because you can add like any element to your list. It's not only limited to a single type of data structure. Like, it's pretty different from other kind of coding languages, which you can only have a certain type of data structure, array list or array. So it's pretty different, and I think it's a pretty convenient way in some directions, right? And how about, let's say if I want to delete the g, which I don't really know why when you have to add one and then delete one, but this is how you do it. So you're going to do w.pop. Yeah, okay, you cannot really delete. Yeah, you cannot really like delete it from here. So pop, I think I can only be popping integers. However, like let's say if I want to pop 1, then it's going to work. Then print w. Then it should be giving us 2, 3, 1, 3, g. Yeah, okay, so pop is like you're popping the index, okay? So you're popping the index. So let's say we want to w.pop 2. Then you're going to get 1, 2, g. Then print w. Yeah, you get 1, 2, g, right? So that's how you're going to do it. So this is how you add or delete elements from lists, and we can also manipulate list by using loops, which we're just going to be covering it in a minute. What else about list? Oh yeah, list index. Yeah, index is also a big part. So list index and string index. So I'm going to be talking about list index. So list index, as you can see, you start from 0, right? So the first element is going to be 0. The index is going to be 0. And then the nth element from left to right has an index of n-1. So it's actually a pretty straightforward. Like, let's say we have w, then the first, then the 0th index will be 1, right? The first index will be 2, which is the second element. And how we're gonna write it is going to be list bracket, right? Bracket the index number. So this is how I'm gonna write it. So for example, let's say I want to print the second element of w, we're going to do this. W bracket 1. Then you're going to get 2, right? What about print w bracket 0? 1. Now what if we're going to print bracket 3? Then guess what is going to happen? Yeah, we are going to have list index out of range, which means you only have 3 elements, which the maximum index is going to be 2. However, you want to reach the element with index 3, which cannot be reached since this one doesn't even exist inside the list. So you'll be getting this kind of error when you want to get an element that's not exist in the list. Yeah, okay. So now, before talking about loops, I'm going to be talking a little bit about string and list. So this one's actually kind of weird. So let's say if I have a string, right? Calling it s is equal to 1, I am handsome. Okay, so let's just say this is s. Then a really powerful tool to add all of the element into the list. Into list is going to be s.split. So basically you're splitting with like some divider. Like for example, if I want to split, so I want to do this, print list. Yeah, this one. I'm going to comment this out. Yeah, you get I am handsome, right? So basically you are just splitting with the blank. Okay, but let's say if I want to say something like this, then you're going to split with comma, then you're going to get the same thing, right? So three elements. Let's say if I have something like 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, or like you have some kind of input 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then the list is equal to s.split, then you're going to get a numerical list. So this one is actually a pretty powerful tool, right? And however, we have like this kind of this quotation marks, which we don't really want that. So later I'm going to do something called map. So let's just look at it, and comma s.split. So we're going to map this onto an integer. Okay, I think there's a little bit of error here. So I'm going to make this to be int, and I don't really know what that really means. I think this one should be correct. Kind of weird. Strip, yeah, dot split, and print list of list. Okay, yeah, the name is kind of weird. Yeah, okay, now as you can see, this one is actually a pretty useful tool to turn a string into an integer or just into a list, and then you can just append all values. Okay, so now, yeah, this is just show you guys something that's kind of interesting. So now we're going to be going through the loops, which is, I believe, is pretty exciting. So first, let's start with if loop. Okay. So if, like as you can see in this name, it's just checking whether something is true, right? So let's say if n is greater than 2, assume that n is already being declared. Let's say if n is equal to 1. So this is a pretty classical example. If n is greater than 2, return false. So this is actually a function. False. Else print true. So this one is actually a really classical example, and see if you can try to just like interpret this code. Oh, it's pretty straightforward, right? So we declare the variable and we're checking if n is greater than 2, the numerical value of n is greater than 2. If it is, then we're printing false. And else, which basically just means otherwise, right? So if it's not, so this if is checking this statement. Then print false. And else, then we're printing true. Right, so if and else are normally coming in pairs, it's like if you are checking it and otherwise. Oh, you okay? So this one is actually a pretty standard one. And now let's add something more interesting. So let's say if if I have to print neutral if n is equal to 2. So if n is equal to 2. So therefore we cannot finish this problem by only 2 if statements. 2 if and else statements. We need an extra one, which is elif. So elif is basically the simple way of writing else if. So else if a statement, right? So we have else if a statement, and then print neutral. However, the statement is n is equal to 2, right? So notice that here you cannot use single equal, since single equal means assign 2. But double equal means when you're checking whether the two data structures are equal or not, then you're going to use double equal sign. And that is actually pretty important in later coding, and try not to mix them. So now, if n is equal to 1, then we're supposed to get the answer of true, which let's check. Yeah. However, let's say if we turn it to be 2.2, then we get neutral. What if we have 2.0? Then we're still getting neutral, right? Since these two are numerically equal. Okay. So I think you guys already get really a hold of the for loop. So now we're going to be talking about while loop. So how do you interpret while loop? It's basically just trying to check whether something ends or not. Like we're actually waiting for something to end. For example, let's say if I have n is equal to 1, while n is less than 2, print high. Okay, then what will we print out here? Well, we're going to get high forever because we can never be less than 2 since we're not adding 1. So therefore, when n is equal to 1, then it's always less than 2, and we're going to be printing high, and we're going back. So it's going to be going on forever, right? So this is like while loop. So this one is like n is plus or equal to 1, basically means n is equal to n plus 1. So this actually just means while n is less than 2. Then you print high, and then we add the value by 1. So add the value by 1. So add n by 1 right after n. Right after it prints high, right? So this one's actually pretty important. So the procedure is just, it just first, we're checking whether n is less than 2 or not. Checking whether n is less than 2. And then we goes to, if it's true, print high, right? And then we go to add n by 1, and then we continue, we proceed to check again, right? So we're just going on until when? Until n is greater than or equal to 2, and this one will, no, until n is equal to 2, then this loop breaks. So this is how while loop works. Yeah, okay. So let's say if I have to say print n, then you're only getting 1. But let's say if I have n is less than 10, then what? Then you're going to print everything from 1 to 9, right? Since you're checking from, so first n 1 is obviously less than 10, then you print n, print the value of n, then you add 1, then you get 2, then you keep on checking until you reach 8, then 8 you print, you get to 9, then 9 you print n, 9 is obviously 9 is less than 10, so you print 9, and then you add 1, then 10 is not less than 10, then this breaks, right? So now let me give you a problem. So what if I swap these two? Then what will be printed out? So something to think about is you're starting from 1, then you add 1, right? Then before you print n, you add 1. Then you become 2, then you print 2, and then you check it. Then if it's still less than 10, then you print 3. Or then once you reach 9, and 9 is less than 10, then you add 10 and then print n. So for this one, you're actually going to print from all the way from 2 to 10 because you're adding one first and then you're printing n and then you check. So this one you already reached 10, then you're going to be printing 10, then you're checking, then fails, so break, right? So this is how it works. So this is actually one of the ways you can print out the first 10 integers. So now let's proceed. Now we have one more we need to cover, which is for loops. So for loop is like, so for can actually be, the first one is going to be used in numerical values. So how are you going to execute it is you're going to define range, right? So let's say now my task is to print out all the numbers from all the integers from 1 to 10 inclusive. Or we just did it and by using while loop. But now what if I want to use it with for loop? Then something really simple is, well, it's obviously that you're not going to brute force, like, right, print 1, print 2, print 3. Well, you can do that, but it's going to be wasting a lot of time. So let's say if I want to print from 1 to 100, okay, then you're not going to do that, obviously, that is like a waste of your time. So what you're going to do is you're going to find range. So you're going to do find range. So find range, then here you have the start. So this is the start number. End number. Well, now pay attention. You have to plus 1 here. Right. So it's basically saying from start number to this number exclusive. So it's only including this one, the start number, but not the end number. So let's see that. So if I have this one, a comma b, right? Then it's going to iterate from a to b minus 1. Okay, so this one's actually pretty important. I encourage you guys to try to memorize this one. Okay, it's not too hard. So now, this one's just pretty simple, right? So for I in range from 1, right, to 101, then print I. So that's just simply how you're going to do it. Yeah, then we have started from 1, right, going to 100. Right, pretty neat, right? So let's say I want to have a bigger number. That still works. It's pretty fast. So you're starting from 1 to 10,000. So now what if we want to, instead of numbers, we want to iterate through a list or a string. So let's say if I want to print all the characters of is equal to hi Michael. Then how are you going to do it? So for string, you can already do the index. So string index, then it's just string name. I, which I is the index. Okay, so that's how we're going to do it. Then I want to print all the characters from this one, including the space. Then we'll just do for I in range and dot length, right? So length of n is just the length of the string. Print n I. Then you go to have hi Michael, right? We have all the stuff here. But what if now I don't want this? I don't want this space. So the first thing you can do is you can just make a split, right? So you can split it into a list. So s is equal to n dot split n dot stripe dot split. So stripe is when you just get rid of all the spaces. So a really good habit would be try to check with like all this. Try to check with each of the steps. Okay. Okay. There's only splitting the words. Yeah, so for each one, you can actually just try the bashy way, right? So this for I in range length of n, then we can make a new list. Then s dot append of n of I, and then s dot pop, right? The index we want, which is 2. For I in range length of s, print s of I. So that's just how you simply do it, and then you should be getting it. Hi, Michael, right? Yeah. Okay. So now, let's say if I want to iterate through a list. So the one I just did is kind of like a brute force way, right? For a range of the item. Well, a more convenient way is just saying for I and let's just say s is equal to this for I in s, print I. And this is actually even more like easier. So you're just saying for I in s for all the element of s, then just print out it. Then it's going to be looping through the entire list. Okay. Yeah, so this is it for today. Thank you for watching and hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. While we're going to be talking about more of the string and also defining functions and also manipulating it. Thank you.